facing multiple challenges, be they peace and security, development, or environmental. These challenges have placed a large part of the global population at risk of being left further behind. Excellencies, this is why it is important that we use this opportunity to chart a way forward, to further advance human rights for present and future generations. Allow me to share some views on this way forward. First, we need to strengthen human rights architecture at all levels. Our aim must be to provide better protection, especially for the most vulnerable. Political will is key. Broadest participation helps ensure that measures respond to the actual needs of the people and bring results on the ground. Too much polarization in international fora will hold us all back. Multilateral fora like this should be used for hearing out and reaching out in order to settle diverging views. Find solutions and enhance cooperation. Second, we need to ensure that the Human Rights Council and other human rights mechanisms are well equipped. We commend the Council's recent recognition of the right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment, as well as discussions on the impact of climate change on human rights. Environmental concerns and climate change hinder not only the enjoyment of human rights, but also the livelihood and survival of countries and peoples. Third, we need to utilize technology and innovation to advance human rights. Technology can be used to ensure wider access to basic rights, such as the right to education and the right to health. It can also be used to promote human rights education. At the same time, we should be mindful of the risks posed by technologies. We need to build open, free, and secure digital future while utilizing technology to advance human rights for all. Fourth, technical cooperation and capacity building can help promote and protect human rights. Oftentimes, human rights violations can occur from the lack of knowledge and capability. By sharing best practices and learning from one another, we can help close those gaps and strengthen human rights implementation. Fifth, I would like to reiterate the importance of regional human rights mechanisms. Such mechanisms help bridge the gap between national and international human rights protection systems and ensure that all persons can find protection. Cooperation between the UN and regional mechanisms are vital. We need to be strengthened. Lastly, everyone can make a difference. Constructive and meaningful engagement is crucial. We must work together despite our differences. For this reason, Thailand is presenting our candidature for membership of the Human Rights Council for the term 2025 to 2027. We stand ready to work with our partners and international community to further promote and protect human rights for all persons. Excellencies, I wish all of you a successful and fruitful event. Thank you.
Many thanks, Mr. President. Just listening to that, it seems as if one of the key messages we're going to be taking away from today is the fact that it's great that so much is being done to recognize the rights of people all over the world and how many countries are recommitting themselves to those rights. But there is still a lot of work to be done. I think that's going to be one of the underlying takeaways from today's session. We've already heard from one of the co-hosts of this event, the president of the Swiss Confederation. Let me call the other host now, the High Commissioner of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights here at the here in Geneva. Thank you very much, Mr.
Well, Excellencies, colleagues, friends, a very warm welcome to you all. This is a pivotal day. We are here to rebuild a foundation of hope, hope that we need now, perhaps more than ever, at this somber moment in history. Disorder and division, complex and bitter geopolitics, deepening inequalities, and fear, unbearably, in the occupied Palestinian territory and Israel, yet again, as well as in Ukraine, Sudan, Myanmar, and far too many other places. Conflict, intractable and brutal, is inflicting terrible suffering on civilians without remorse. Trust in each other and in the institutions that guide us is in freefall. We are backtracking social ambitions set out in the Sustainable Development Agenda. Civic space is being strangled, silencing the voices that can power the change that we actually need. The climate crisis is burning up our world. These and other crises are the consequences of failure to uphold human rights. They are not the failure of human rights. They bear witness to the damage that is done when human rights are ignored and violated. Excellencies, yesterday communities from every region called urgently for change, proposed transformative ideas and made commitments. And over 155 states announced their own pledges on a wide range of human rights issues, from advancing women's rights and children's rights to tangible commitments on climate change, from empowering people with disabilities to ensuring legislative reforms that promise lasting impact on people's lives. I'm very grateful for this surge of transformative promises. Today, I'm asking you to shift from the specifics of your national or individual perspectives to 4 key discussion areas about how we can make human rights central to all policy making and all action, now and in the future. Human rights is a global public good, and as leaders, you are entrusted with the duty of advancing it. First, peace and security. Every individual has a right to live in peace, and all human rights measures ultimately contribute to preventing tensions and conflicts. War polarizes, it divides, it dehumanizes the other. It impels us to take positions for and against, a binary view, human versus inhuman. But human rights cut through these divisions. Radically, they value each and every human being, regardless of which side you are on. As leaders, I ask you to contribute to a deep action of how we can move human rights back to the center of decision-making to prevent the scourge of war. Second, digital transformation. We are all aware about the immense potential benefits. But let us be honest, from artificial intelligence to neurotechnology to cybercrimes, surveillance and bioweapons, we're faced with a world where the fundament of humanity, human agency and human dignity, is at risk. This is the question we need to address: how to protect our humanity and our rights in this new universe. Third, our economies. I'm absolutely convinced that our economic systems at all levels will need to be infused with human rights, and this too will require radical transformation, not least in light of the green and social transition underway, as well as the massive global inequalities we face. But how do we go about this? And fourth, human rights are part of the ecosystem that ensures that humanity can survive and thrive. Our planet is in profound crisis because we have ignored the right to a clean, healthy and sustainable environment for much too long. What will it take to place human rights, not business interests, at the center of all national and global policy? Human rights conversations can be sensitive, difficult and uncomfortable, speaking truth to power. They are often meant to flip orthodoxies, and they can therefore be radical. But they must always take place in a spirit of respectful and constructive engagement in the search for a better world. I'm asking you to come together, transcending different societies and systems, to seek out areas of agreement and ensure meaningful change. 75 years ago, our forebears took on this role. They overcame their differences and they took out the steps that would create the foundations of freedom, justice and peace in the world. It is our turn now to take on this profound.
Greece, thank you for joining us, Your Excellency. Natasha Pirc-Mosa, President of Slovenia. Thank you for joining us, Madam President.
Your Excellency, thank you. A very good morning from Slovenia that I represent here. Mr. High Commissioner, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I am a human rights lawyer by heart, and I strongly believe in human rights. I dedicated all my professional life to human rights. I was also a journalist, so that was, another good experience to see how people are treated. And I would like to speak here today about many things, but I will tackle only the most important ones. Yesterday, I had the honor to confer the first ever Human Rights Award as the President of the Republic of Slovenia. Slovenia is a young country. We celebrated 32nd birthday, and we never thought before to give an award to an individual or a group of people for dedicating their life and effort and energy to human rights. I decided to do that. And yesterday we had a really, really great event. The recipient is a long-standing human rights advocate and a director of the Slovenian Legal Center for the Protection of Human Rights and the Environment. I thought such an award was, of course, long due. This is why I decided to establish it. Because I really think that we must always encourage people who make an extra effort to stand up for human rights. In these trying times, the motivation to provide boost and protection to human rights defenders is all the more pertinent. It so happens that the award coincides with the 75th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. I believe this is both symbolic and fitting. The Universal Declaration is a milestone in human rights history. It inspires us all to continue working to ensure that all people can gain freedom, equality, and dignity, the very motto of today's event. Fast forward 75 years, and where are we today? We have come far, but I think we will all agree not far enough. Human rights are not enjoyed equally by everyone. Yet, Excellencies, make no mistake, while we'll face a lot of difficulties in the field of human rights, good progress has been made too. Human rights have been and continue to be codified. This is really, really very important. Monitoring bodies, special mechanisms of the Human Rights Council, universal periodic review all serve to regularly check our national human rights state of play. 30 years ago, the Vienna Declaration and Program of Action established the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, which was a gigantic step forward for global human rights protection. The office then went on to conduct field operations. This all represents enormous progress, particularly as the share for human rights from the UN budget has always been rather tight. We have to be aware of that fact as well. But your work is of great importance. You know that human rights are not mere abstract principles. They are the very foundation upon which a just and compassionate society stands. You know that human rights are non-negotiable. These are not privileges to be granted selectively. You, all present here, know that. I know this. But does everybody? Regarding the challenges ahead, there are many. Europe has always looked at Palestine with unease, with a sense of failure. What we see today is painful, particularly for the European Union. The Palestinians under occupation have been denied their human rights for the past 75 years. All of us have been shocked to see the horror unfolding. The unspeakable images of Hamas terrorists attacking and killing Israeli civilians, and the terrifying realization that thousands of human beings, for a large part women and children, killed in Gaza, appear not to count for more than a collateral damage. This is an attack on our humanity, and indeed, Mr. High Commissioner, a human crisis. Just a couple of days ago, I had the interview in my country. They were asking me about Palestine and Israel. As a mother, as a wife, as a woman, it's hard for me to watch the images from Israel, from the 9th of October, and now in Palestine. And if you ask me, being a human rights lawyer, dedicated my life to human rights, it's hard for me, and I don't want to put myself in the position to be either Team Israel or Team Palestine. I want to be Team Humanity. And this is what we all, thank you, have to work on. And not to forget, other wars are also taking place. Let us not forget Ukraine, and especially the mass killings and rapes of civilians in Bucha, and the other 55 armed conflicts around the world, which is the highest number after the Second World War. And not to mention the wars where no guns are used, but our lives and ways of life are severely threatened anyway. Most of us here have recently returned from COP28, which is finishing today. I spoke there of the importance of not treating human rights and climate change separately, as is often the case. We have begun to talk about the new generation of environment and climate change-based human rights. The right to a clean and healthy environment, the right to water, and the right to clean air are among those newly emerging human rights. And I'm happy to note that at least the last COP did a good job in acknowledging the human right to a clean and healthy environment. Slovenia feels immense gratitude to all partners involved in more than a decade-long work towards the declaration of this right. Declaring, we all know, however, is not enough. The key lies in further codification and, above all, the implementation of these rights. I salute the Office of the High Commissioner in taking the lead on. You can always count on Slovenia's continued support as indeed our efforts for the global promotion and protection of human rights, Mr. Commissioner. My final word of thanks and support, therefore, all the human rights and women's rights activists around the world. It is our obligation not to let them down. In this modern era, let our collective resolve be a beacon of hope for those who suffer in shadows. Let us champion the cause of human rights with an unwavering determination, recognizing that the true measure of our civilization lies in how we treat the most vulnerable among us. As we forge ahead into an uncertain future, let our legacy be one of compassion, equality, and justice. In the face of adversity, let us be the advocates, the defenders, and the champions of human rights, ensuring that the flame of justice burns bright for generations to come. And I will just conclude with one quote that I always have in the back of my brains. It is a quote of a famous human rights activist from Russia. You know what he said? Human rights are like muscles. If we don't use them, they will atrophy. Thank you very much for the attention.
Thank you very much for your thoughts and reflections. J'aimerais bien aller vers l'Afrique. Messieurs le Président du Sénégal, un honneur de vous avoir parmi nous. Et voilà, j'aimerais bien savoir quelles sont vos réflexions, la force des droits humains pour faire défi et pour trouver des solutions aux défis d'aujourd'hui et de demain. Monsieur le Président.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Commissaire. Chers collègues, Monsieur le Président de la Confédération helvétique, distingués représentants des pays membres, Mesdames et Messieurs, Monsieur le Haut-Commissaire, je voudrais d'abord vous féliciter pour les efforts que vous entreprenez depuis votre désignation à la tête du Commissariat des droits de l'homme. Cette rencontre d'aujourd'hui qui marque le 75e anniversaire de la Déclaration universelle des droits de l'homme en est un exemple. Les droits de l'homme sont vécus diversement selon les latitudes. Il faut rappeler à l'origine les 48 États qui ont eu le mérite de faire cette déclaration, où dans l'article 1er, ils ont indiqué l'égale dignité, que les hommes naissent libres et égaux, et ont la même dignité pendant qu'ils signent cette déclaration universelle. Le reste du monde était sous leur tutelle. Le reste du monde était des colonies de ces puissances qui ont eu à lancer cette première déclaration. Et depuis lors, beaucoup de chemin a été parcouru. Il est vrai qu'il y a eu des progrès selon les centres d'intérêt, ce qu'on a appelé les différentes générations de droits de l'homme, les droits civils et politiques, les droits économiques, les droits sociaux, les droits à l'environnement, à la paix, à la sécurité, on le disait tout à l'heure, le droit au développement. Alors, je pense que si nous voulons réussir cette ambition, puisque l'atteinte des droits de l'homme, c'est un combat de tous les jours, et tous les jours, on doit progresser, pas à pas. Il faut d'abord qu'il n'y ait pas une sélectivité de milliers de civils, hommes et femmes à Gaza, sans que la communauté internationale soit capable au moins d'obtenir un cessez-le-feu. Et de revenir sur les actions terroristes du Hamas qui ont été comparables à de la barbarie. On ne peut pas ne pas condamner les bombardements qui tuent des centaines, voire des milliers de civils, hommes et femmes à Gaza, sans que la communauté internationale soit capable au moins d'obtenir un cessez-le-feu. Et de revenir sur l'un des principes fondamentaux qui est le droit du peuple palestinien à disposer d'un État comme tous les États, tous les autres pays du monde. Il faut donc que nous puissions, tout en soutenant l'existence de l'État d'Israël, qui doit aussi vivre en sécurité, exiger que les Palestiniens aient droit à un État, comme tout le monde. Alors, tant que ces sujets ne sont pas traités de la même façon, évidemment, nous parlons longtemps de droits de l'homme sans jamais y arriver. Je vais prendre un autre exemple de l'activité, c'est la lutte contre le terrorisme. On le sait, aujourd'hui, le continent africain est en train de devenir le ventre mou du terrorisme international. Terrorisme importé pour l'essentiel du Levant après que l'État islamique ait été fait. En Syrie, en Irak, on a laissé passer par la Libye, qui elle-même a été écrasée, la Libye. Et à partir de la Libye, les terroristes sont rentrés dans le Sahel avec des quantités astronomiques d'armes. Aujourd'hui, tout le continent africain a presque oublié les efforts de développement pour assurer le survie face au terrorisme en Afrique. Que ce soit sur la bande du Sahel, sur le lac Tchad, le bassin du lac Tchad avec le Nigeria, le Tchad, le Cameroun, sous l'effet de Boko Haram, que ce soit sur la corne de l'Afrique, que ce soit même plus bas encore vers le Mozambique, partout et depuis plus d'une dizaine d'années, devant le Conseil de sécurité, les Africains ont plaidé pour que le Conseil, qui a la responsabilité de la paix et de la sécurité dans le monde, puisse dans le financement de la lutte contre le terrorisme. Mais c'est encore l'indifférence générale. Donc les pays se battent comme ils peuvent avec les conséquences que nous connaissons. Alors moi je pense qu'il nous faut, on l'a vu, la COP28 c'était terminé en poisson, parce que là aussi, vrai, il faut voir quels sont les vrais responsables de la situation de la planète aujourd'hui. Et qui doit faire plus d'efforts pour que nous restions globalement dans l'équité, puisque nous avons la planète en commun. Mais il y a de gros consommateurs d'énergie fossile qui d'ailleurs refusent le même droit aux autres. Les mêmes qui consomment aujourd'hui le charbon en abondance, le pétrole, tout ce qui est polluant, disent oui, nous allons faire des efforts, mais vous ne pouvez pas et nous refusons de financer votre développement. Donc, où sont les droits de l'homme dans tout cela? Alors, nous, côté africain, nous pensons, et j'insiste là-dessus, que nous devons bâtir un dialogue franc, un dialogue entre partenaires égaux, dignité encore une fois, et qui tienne compte des consensus que nous pouvons bâtir ensemble. Sur une des questions, nous n'avons pas accepté en ce moment en Afrique qu'on nous impose une certaine vision des droits de l'homme, très clairement. Parce que pour qu'une valeur soit universelle, il faut qu'elle soit partagée. Le monde est différent, on le voit à travers cette salle. Ceux qui sont d'Asie, d'Afrique, d'Amérique, d'Europe, différents. Mais nous devons converger vers des valeurs communes. Et donc, je plaide pour cette discussion, ce partage, consensus et non une injonction qui peut venir d'un groupe parce qu'il est plus puissant et qui veut imposer sa volonté aux autres. Ça crée la fracturation, ça crée le conflit et ça ne nous permet pas d'avancer. Donc je vais m'en arrêter là, mais en tout cas, je vous salue et cet exercice vaut la peine d'être fait aujourd'hui pour faire progresser ces différents droits, qu'il s'agisse des droits politiques et civils, qu'il s'agisse des droits économiques, sociaux et environnementaux.
Merci. Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. C'est aussi intéressant de voir la Déclaration universelle des droits de l'homme à l'origine du mouvement de la décolonisation. Je pense que c'est aussi très important de voir ce 1 et 3. I would like to move to the President of Poland. And what are your reflections, President?
Dzień dobry, wielce szanowny Panie Wysoki Komisarzu, Ekscelencje, Panie i Panowie Prezydenci, Premierzy, Ministrowie, wszyscy dostojni przedstawiciele państw członkowskich Organizacji Narodów Zjednoczonych, wszyscy dostojni przybyli goście. Przede wszystkim chcę bardzo podziękować za zaproszenie na to spotkanie, na ten to niezwykłe wydarzenie tutaj w Organizacji Narodów Zjednoczonych związane z 75. rocznicą przyjęcia Powszechnej Karty Praw Człowieka, Powszechnej Deklaracji Praw Człowieka. Dziękuję za to zaproszenie panu wysokiemu komisarzowi. Dziękuję wszystkim państwu. Jestem tutaj wśród państwa z satysfakcją jako prezydent kraju, który był jednym z twórców Organizacji Narodów Zjednoczonych zaraz po II wojnie światowej, choć jednocześnie muszę powiedzieć, że patrząc historycznie, wtedy w 1948 roku mój kraj, Polska, wstrzymał się od głosowania nad przyjęciem Powszechnej Deklaracji Praw Człowieka. Stało się to tak dlatego, że to były dla nas bardzo trudne i szczególne czasy. W Polsce w II wojnie światowej znaleźliśmy się za żelazną kurtyną, w sowieckiej strefie wpływów, w istocie bez prawdziwej suwerenności, bez prawdziwej niepodległości, zdominowani przez wielkiego sąsiada ze wschodu, przez Rosję sowiecką, z narzuconą przez Rosję sowiecką władzą. To były czasy stalinowskie. Mówienie o prawach człowieka, no oczywiście pozornie, zewnętrznie i Związek Sowiecki i władze sowieckie jak najbardziej udawały, że prawa człowieka są przestrzegane. Bardzo wiele na ten temat mówi. W istocie, jak sytuacja wyglądała, to dzisiaj wszyscy wiemy, jak niezwykły rozmiar zbrodni przeciwko ludzkości, przeciwko człowiekowi został popełniony przez tamte władze w tamtych czasach, poczynając od czystek w samym Związku Sowieckim, stalinowskiego horroru lat 30. poprzez głód wywołany przez Stalina na Ukrainie, straszliwe ludobójstwo, jakiego tam się dopuszczono, poprzez cały stalinowski terror, później lat 40. i 50. także i w Polsce. Ale chciałbym podkreślić jedno w tym kontekście, że choć Polska nie zagłosowała wtedy za przyjęciem Powszechnej Deklaracji Praw Człowieka, to jednak polscy przedstawiciele brali udział w pracach. Pani Fryderyka Kalinowska zasiadała w Komisji do spraw praw kobiet. Mamy więc także swój udział w treści deklaracji. Później oczywiście ona została przez Polskę przyjęta w latach 70. i dzisiaj uważamy ją i oczywiste jest dla nas, tak jak i dla wszystkich innych krajów Narodów Zjednoczonych, jest bardzo ważna i cenna dzisiaj, kiedy mamy pełną suwerenność, pełną niepodległość w Polsce. Jesteśmy krajem w pełni demokratycznym. Niezwykle dbamy o to, aby prawa człowieka były przestrzegane i są przestrzegane nie tylko u nas, ale aby były także i przestrzegane w innych miejscach świata. O tym jest ta dzisiejsza dyskusja. To wszyscy wiemy, że to są prawa uniwersalne, że one mają wymiar transcendentny, to znaczy są absolutnie powszechnie obowiązujące wobec każdego człowieka, niezależnie od jego narodowości, niezależnie od części świata, z której pochodzi, niezależnie od jego koloru skóry, od jego wyznania, od jego płci. Każdy człowiek tymi prawami w sposób jednakowy jest objęty i każdy w sposób przypisany je ma. Nie trzeba ich w żaden sposób udowadniać, nie trzeba ich w żaden sposób dodatkowo przyznawać. One po prostu są znane każdemu człowiekowi z założenia, z góry, niezależnie od jego kultury, w jakiej jest wychowany, niezależnie od tego, jaka ideologia w danym momencie obowiązuje, w jakiej części świata, czy w tej, w której on żyje, czy w jakiejkolwiek innej. To wiemy dzisiaj na pewno i to jest ogromny dorobek karty. Z czego wynika ten dorobek i to ustanowienie? Oczywiście można o prawach człowieka, o tej myśli dotyczącej równości wszystkich ludzi mówić od bardzo dawna, nawet od czasów średniowiecznych, czy wręcz od czasów jeszcze filozofów. Natomiast fakty są takie, jak tutaj już dzisiaj mówiono, jak mówił pan wysoki komisarz, że to II wojna światowa, która nastąpiła po I wojnie, była tym głębokim wstrząsem dla całej ludzkości, aby taki dokument jasno i głośno wypowiedzieć, aby się pod nim podpisać. Bo to, co stało się w II wojnie światowej, było czymś, patrząc poprzez straszliwe ludobójstwo, poprzez Holokaust, kompletnie niepojęte dla większości cywilizowanego świata, było czymś, nad czym nie można było przejść do porządku dziennego. Została ustanowiona po to, by stworzyć ten katalog uniwersalny, właśnie transcendentny, jednakowych dla wszystkich wartości, które muszą być przestrzegane. Są przestrzegane. No, otóż niestety jest tak przez cały ten okres 75 lat, że wiemy, że one ciągle gdzieś są łamane w sposób mniej lub bardziej drastyczny. Dziękuję Organizacji Narodów Zjednoczonych o to, że systematycznie o to dba, że wszyscy składamy sprawozdanie z tego, jak przestrzegania praw człowieka w naszych krajach, w najmniejszych detalach, że dyskutujemy na te tematy, że rozwijamy te kwestie związane z podstawowymi prawami. Ale patrząc na ten świat, który dzisiaj nas otacza, gdzie jak tutaj przed momentem podkreślali państwo prezydenci, dzisiaj na całym świecie mamy około 60 potężnych, poważnych konfliktów zbrojnych. One się toczą. W niektórych częściach świata ludzie nawet nie wiedzą o tym, że po drugiej stronie
thing for everybody that is looking in an honest and just way at this is the fact that Israel has the right to defend itself. This is one side of the coin. On the other side, as international community, we must not stay indifferent to the fact that rockets are falling on civilian settlements on both sides. And this is something that we have to be opposed to. And as international community, we have to say no. We have to do everything in our power to stop it, to make sure that civilian settlements in the Gaza Strip are not bombed and that civilian settlements in Israel are not bombed, where ordinary people are living. This is not an army. These are not soldiers. These are not military facilities. On the third side, ladies and gentlemen, there is a question about the effectiveness. Well, that might be the most important thing. I'm saying that also as a lawyer. Effectiveness. And human rights, enforcement of human rights. We have to be effective. And in order for us to be effective, we not only have to verbally stigmatize all the cases where human rights are violated, especially when they are drastically violated, but first and foremost, we have to punish for human rights being dramatically and drastically violated. This is a pivotal issue, vis-a-vis which we cannot just pass by indifferently, turn our back on, because there is no punishment if we do not draw consequences, if we do not bring to courts justice for crimes against humanity, against human rights, then human rights will always be violated, because there will always be somebody in the world who would take advantage or use this theoretical possible impunity. That is why we have to go to all lengths to make sure that there is no impunity. This is our big task today, our responsibility, not only today, not only vis-à-vis the contemporary people, but also vis-à-vis the future generations. Just as today we are responsible in front of them for what kind of planet we're going to hand over to them, and that is why we are implementing climate protection policy. And that is why we are saying that it is necessary to implement the principle of sustainable development, because future generations also have the right to life, and they also have the right to live in a clean environment, to use natural environment. And in the same way, we have to make sure that those who violate human rights, those who suppress our nations, those who take away freedom, those who kill, those who murder, that they are punished. And this is the big obligation that we have today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to move to the President of Greece. I'd like to hear your reflections, President.
Thank you for the invitation, High Commissioner, and Excellencies, dear colleagues and friends. I am honored to address the event dedicated to the 75th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, a text that was born from the ashes of World War II and the horrors that had been inflicted upon humanity. As René Cassin, the renowned jurist and one of its drafters, has said, there will never be peace on this planet as long as human rights are being violated in any part of the world. The declaration has always been of inspiring, emblematic nature. It constitutes the expression of the collective conscience of humanity and of our solid belief that peace, justice and prosperity can only be achieved through the universal and unconditional protection of fundamental human rights. According to its preamble, it is the disregard and contempt for human rights that have resulted in barbarous acts which have outraged the conscience of mankind. This text ushered in a new era in international relations, which, in the midst of Cold War, was characterized by the emergence of international human rights law. The Nuremberg Principles, formulated in 1950, were the initial step towards defining and preventing crimes against humanity. In the decades that ensued, the drafting, elaboration and adoption efforts. Since then, a lot of progress has been made in many areas. Decolonization, protection of the most vulnerable groups and persons, economic and social rights, liberation of many people from oppression, environmental and climate awareness. Nevertheless, our modern world still has to effectively tackle old and new challenges. The ongoing Russian invasion in Ukraine, as well as the recent horrific terrorist attacks against Israel and the dire humanitarian situation in Gaza, highlight the need for respect for international humanitarian law and the effective protection of human rights during armed conflicts. Even within democratic societies, inequalities persist. Women, children, migrants, refugees, persons with disabilities, the elderly, and many other vulnerable social groups face intersectional forms of discrimination and fight for their dignity and equal treatment. Climate change and the extreme natural phenomena caused by it not only put at risk the lives of millions of people, but also endanger social cohesion and the enjoyment of basic human rights. Against this background, the question arises: what should be done? Is there a need of new international human rights legal instruments or mechanisms? Or instead, should we focus on the effective implementation of the existing legal and institutional tools at our disposal? Respect for human rights has always been a matter of political will of states, and at the same time, a way of thinking of every individual. Further consolidation on a national level needs to be followed by the embedment of international criminal justice, as it has emerged over the last decades with the creation of the International Criminal Court and other special tribunals. Human rights must be placed at the epicenter of every decision-making process on national and international level. Whenever states defend themselves from aggression or when peoples struggle for self-determination, liberty and independence, they must always take every necessary step to ensure respect for the lives of innocent civilians. Whenever governments plan their respective policies aiming to tackle problems such as climate change or the management of migratory flows, they must always consider the impact of basic human rights of peoples affected. When companies prepare their business plans, they must always abide by relevant human rights provisions. Last but not least, when citizens vote, they must always prioritize issues pertaining to human rights, bearing in mind the consequences that their choice might have on the lives of those persons belonging to minority social groups. We all must work together to keep alive the spirit of the universal Declaration of Human Rights, to protect what we have achieved since 1948. Human rights are not a luxury. They have always been and will remain an imperative for our international community as a whole. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Now, Estonia, President of Estonia, what are your thoughts?
Thank you. Honorable High Commissioner, dear colleagues, Excellencies, thank you for the opportunity to commemorate together the 75th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. The ideas and spirit that led to its adoption are highly relevant to this day. Human rights are essential parts of international peace and security. I am truly impressed that 75 years ago, the signatories of the Declaration were able to agree and adopt such a remarkable instrument in scope and sophistication. Since then, it has inspired multiple international human rights treaties and declarations, a great number of regional human rights conventions, domestic human rights legislation, and constitutional provision. Today's anniversary is a good moment to acknowledge the extent to which the human rights system has improved human well-being globally during those 75 years. Within a couple of decades ago, my own country, Estonia, has moved from being a foreign-occupied and oppressed society to a confident, independent democracy with strong civil society and respect for the rule of law. But Estonia is only one of the many countries worldwide where the change in democracy and the centrality of respect for universal human rights has brought rapid development and changed the whole society in a positive way. Unfortunately, today's world is also characterized by a multitude of crises and wars, which all are challenging the confidence in universal and indivisible nature of human rights. In Europe, Russia is waging a senseless, brutal war of aggression, the consequences of which go well beyond Ukraine. In Israel and in occupied Palestinian territories, renewed violence has been unleashed. Several climate and environmental-related disasters all over the world are displacing or impoverishing tens of millions of people each year. The consequences of abandoning our moral principles and human rights are clear. What follows is duplicity, tyranny, and an endless stream of environmental, humanitarian and human rights crises. Vigorous effort is required in holding all human rights violators accountable, without exemptions. There should not be any discussion about security versus human rights, a thriving tech sector versus human rights, privacy online versus protection of our children. We should furthermore remain extremely vigilant to a situation where some actors are trying to justify the undermining of human rights with a need for socio-economic development. So what can be done to revitalize the strive for universal human rights? The key might be the close interaction between domestic activism and international institutions of review and accountability. By allowing people to participate fully and meaningfully in decision-making and enabling every member of society to contribute, we promote human rights at the local level, but also internationally, that putting human rights at the center of our actions will guarantee us the best solutions. As Eleanor Roosevelt, a tireless advocate for human rights, has said, where, after all, do universal human rights begin? In small places, close to home, so close and so small that they cannot be seen on any maps of the world. Indeed, to make a change, we should start with ourselves. I firmly believe in this, and so do my fellow Estonians. In planning a more sustainable environmental transition, Estonia has made a commitment to incorporate human rights considerations in domestic climate change-related legislation. For example, just yesterday, Estonia announced to advance gender equality in the framework of green transition. Moreover, Estonia will run for UN Human Rights Council membership for a period of 2026 to 2028. Let me assure of my nation's readiness to stand at your service in helping to protect and promote human rights at the international level. The one who knows how it feels to live under oppression will always give one's best effort to advocate for freedom, respect for human dignity and human rights. I would also like to encourage all global leaders to speak up for human rights and enable human rights to be part of the solutions to all the challenges we face. Let's continue putting human rights on the top of the international agenda, like we are doing here today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Quisiera dar la palabra.
I would now like to call upon, and it's a very great honor, to call upon the Vice President of Colombia. It's a great pleasure to have you here with us. I'd like to hear about your thoughts in order to find solutions to the challenges we face. Thank you very much indeed. I would like to extend greetings and hail the fact that we're celebrating the 75th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. I hail the efforts undertaken by the High Commissioner for Human Rights to contribute to guaranteeing the rights of all persons across the world. Since I was a very young girl, I heard that we are all born free and equal before the law. However, I come from a country that wasn't free a country that was engaged in slavery, and my ancestors were dehumanized and were treated as animals. As a result of this, we have lived through deep structural inequalities. So I've always wondered what freedom is and what freedom actually means for a country that's lived through colonialization and slavery. What does this mean? Where does equality come from and freedom? From places of oppression, exclusion, and marginalization. I believe that human rights were conceived in Europe, very different thinking from the rest of the world. And thus, human rights was imposed upon the world, which really doesn't speak to us when we live in a country such as Colombia, where, for instance, to guarantee human rights, we were told that we had to engage in a policy of war on drugs. And that policy on drugs in my country has only claimed the lives of many people. It's caused displacement, forced displacement. We have a policy on drugs which is based on corruption. Because those who are being destroyed are indigenous peoples, peasants, those of African descent. Those being imprisoned are women. But I have never noted that this war on drugs at an international level has seized a bank which money laundered the funds from drug trafficking. But there again, the concept of security was born. It's a concept which has militarized our land so that the arms industry has become stronger at the cost of the lives and the blood that is being spilt in our nations. The notion of security, which has sown the vision of internal enemy. And that view in my country has meant that Colombians are killing each other. This has led to a significant number of deaths in my country. Thus, I do believe that we need to have an in-depth questioning of human rights and the approaches applied. There are countries who apply human rights and under the excuse, the pretext of rights, other countries invade territories, others impose sanctions, and they become judges, if you will. But when applying those rights in their own nations, they do not take on those human rights. So I believe that we don't have the genuine legitimacy that the world requires, because all member states on an equal footing should shoulder their responsibility and should cover the needs of guaranteeing human rights as a whole. I would support those here who have said that civil society have to pay for the consequences of an armed group. Civil society in Palestine should not have to pay for the consequences of the actions of an armed group. It would be as if in Colombia, all Colombians would have to pay because there are terrorist groups or criminal groups that infringe the rights of the people. We went through that experience. We had governments who justified the murdering of young people on the pretext of exterminating the guerrillas. However, what they did was they killed innocent young people. Now, in a process of justice, the truth is now emerging. We are faced with multifaceted crises.
Ahora tenemos la crisis del cambio climático. Y mientras en mi país los líderes defensores de los ríos
can ensure that life is possible across the planet. And when I talk about life, I'm not only referring to human life, I'm also referring to life in its broadest sense. Defending the rivers, defending the Amazon, today is a necessity when it comes to human rights. Colombia has been developing peace processes, and we have acquired experience in our own country. Of course, many conflicts remained, many armed conflicts need to be overcome in our country. But we are willing and we are committed to human rights, to bring about peace, as the President Gustavo Petro said, between Israel and Palestine, and also between other nations. Because moving forward on the path of peace in the world is guaranteeing a better state of play for future generations. Thank you very much.
And the Vice Muchas gracias. Vice President of the Maldives, representing a small island developing country with its own perspective on human rights. Mr. Vice President, you have the floor.
High Commissioner, distinguished panelists, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It is an honor to be among such esteemed panelists and to have the opportunity to engage in this conversation today. The government of Maldives believes that the answer to the question proposed lies in prioritizing the human in the pursuit of development and in our consideration of solution to challenges. This is the principle of President Dr. Mohammad Muiz's development path. President Dr. Muiz took office just last month, promising inclusive development, development that delivers prosperity and is also just. A small state, the Maldives has always prioritized multilateralism and the rule of law. This is what guarantees our place in the international community, what guarantees equality among states, regardless of size or might. Equality, what is gives emphasis to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the inherent dignity of all individuals. This leaves no room for selectivity or partiality. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. While we commemorate 75 years of the Universal, and I stress, Universal Declaration of Human Rights, I turn your attention to the dire humanitarian crisis in Gaza, Palestine. The Maldives reiterates its call for an immediate and urgent end to the war in Gaza. We remain steadfast in our call to end Israel's indiscriminate killing of innocent civilians, women and children, many among them, to protect fundamental rights and freedoms, to uphold human rights and international humanitarian law. The current situation in Gaza and the occupied Palestine and other areas of geopolitical conflict serves as poignant example of the urgent need global solidarity in upholding human rights. Integrating human rights into the solution for global challenges requires a comprehensive and holistic approach. There should not be an option, but rather a fundamental aspect of any policy program or initiative. Let me briefly outline some of the measures that could be undertaken to underscore centrality of human rights in our response to global challenges. First, we must understand that human rights are non-negotiable and must be held as minimum standards to respect the dignity of every individual. Second, human rights promotion should be a holistic approach involving governments, civil society organizations, businesses, international bodies, and individuals. Third, by fostering human rights education at all levels, we can cultivate a culture of respect of human rights and empower individuals now and in the future to become advocates for change. 4. Our pursuit to safeguard human rights, it is crucial to recognize and appreciate the role of multilateralism and the rules-based international order to promote and safeguard our communities to promote peace, security, and development. And lastly, we must encourage the growing engagement of young people in climate change and human rights discourse, countering pessimistic views and offering hope for inclusive policies and action. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, to conclude, let me remind you all the words of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. All human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. As we move forward, let us ensure that these words remain at the forefront of our collective efforts to promote and protect human rights. To foster a society where humanity and human dignity are respected, protected, and celebrated, let us reiterate our strong commitment to uphold in the principle of the UDHR. I thank you.
Thank you very, very much. I think this was a very important, very good beginning. It sets the stage for the day. Thanks a lot for doing it.
Thank you very much, Your Excellencies, High Commissioner. Wonderful words of inspiration and encouragement there, just to reaffirm our commitments to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. We just want to play you a short musical clip now by the Italian composer Ludovico Einaudi. It was composed especially for this occasion, and I'm very, very sure it will take you on a very reflective journey. to populate the stage with our next session, which is a roundtable on the future of human rights, peace and security. I'd like to also let you know that another roundtable is going on simultaneously in room 19, and this is the future of digital and the future of human rights and digital, I beg your pardon. That is going on simultaneously in room 19. So for those who want to be listening to that, room 19, in here we shall have the future of human rights and peace and security. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights, conceived in the aftermath of a world war as part